Buying a property in Spain. There are many reasons to purchase a property in Spain. The climate, the food, the culture, or simply to enjoy life. If you already see yourself buying the house of your dreams in the Mediterranean, it is important to be cautious and follow a series of steps. First, prepare a budget and take into account all the possible expenses. Remember to add transfer tax or VAT to the sale price, as well as legal fees, notary fees, and land registry fees. And even if it was love at first sight, do not rush or sign anything. The most important thing, especially if you're not yet a Spanish resident, is to hire an independent lawyer, a specialist who speaks your language and solely defends your interests. Together, you can review the characteristics of the house, should it have pending charges, negotiate a mortgage with the banks, and you will always be up to date throughout the whole process. But most importantly, fall in love with your property and do things by the book. Your new life starts there. Pellicer and Herdia, international lawyers.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to our regular webinars that we are trying to update you on the law. You on the law in Spain, and we thought it might be very, very useful for those of you who might be thinking about buying a property in Spain, or either buying a piece of land and build your home or dream home in Spain. Let me just introduce you first that we just start with the explanation. We've got on the first side, we've got Djordy Roijen. I don't know if I pronounced properly. Djordy, hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Ignacio. Good afternoon, everybody.
Djordy is an architect who specializes on unique projects. And obviously, he will explain to us about what they do, what is the value of an architect, what is the value of a project manager, or what is just the value that professionals could bring when we all think about buying a piece of land, building our dream home, and probably not to have too much stress with choosing the builders and the materials and dealing with the administration. On the other side, we have the international lawyer, Pedro Heredia. Hello, Pedro.
Hello, Ignacio. How are you doing? Thank you very much.
Very well, thanks.
And no, it's a very interesting topic about buying the property. Obviously, with Djordy as an architect, it's an important position in order to obviously to check and deal and in order to start a process of building. So it's going to be a happy and really good webinar to discuss.
Thank you, Pedro. Well, Pedro will explain to us a little bit as well about the whole process. It's very important that you make the right decisions. As we've been discussing before, it is important to have the immigration papers when you come over to Spain. Obviously, we just went through all this before, the taxation planning. But at the end of the day, you're going to either buy a property in Spain, rent, buy or resale property, probably just give stage payments and off-plan property. That's another option. Or just you might end up saying, well, we're going to build our own home and appoint the right people. Recently, I have a few queries about this situation. And correct me if I'm wrong, Pedro and Djordy, is a bit of a nightmare to deal with refurbishments. Deal with so many people, trying to put them all the same day to start working and coordinate that and get the right price. That's another story. So that's on the facts. Then you have the legalization of the property. It's not the same buying a property than buying a piece of land and then be self-developer. It is much more work, but probably in the long run might be either cheaper, or at least you could find that is according to your taste. Okay, I'm going to pass over to Djordy, and he will explain to us what he does, what is his value, what can clients do to improve their knowledge on the process, and so on, so on. So, Djordy, I will pass it over to you. Later on, Pedro will tell us a little bit about the conveyancing, and then please send us your questions, because it is important to know what is your priority with this topic today. Over to you, Djordy.
Thank you very much, Ignacio. Well, good afternoon, everybody. First of all, I would like to thank Ignacio and Pedro for inviting me to be part of this webinar. It's an honor to be here today. I hope that I will be able to give an introduction of what it means to build or refurbish your property in Spain. My name is Djordy Roijen. I'm an architect and project manager. I grew up and graduated in this region where I've been able to develop most of my career. Well, the fact of growing up here in Spain and being Dutch has allowed me to integrate and have a personal knowledge of the local way of doing things. And in the meantime, still have a clear perspective on how things are done in the UK and the north of Europe. Within 10 or 15 minutes, I will try to give you an impression of what it means to be an autopromotor, or let's call it a self-developer, if you agree, Ignacio.
Yes, of course.
Well, of course, this doesn't only apply to building a new property, it also applies to refurbishment, extending your property or rebuilding a property of your own. It is interesting to know that before the financial crisis in 2006, around an average of 85% of the new construction was promoted by developers, whereby the end customer directly signed the purchase contract with the project developer that would arrange almost everything and deliver the key-ready home. Well, due to various factors such as price drops of plots and the variation in supply and construction costs, the number of investors and the so-called self-developers started to grow. Today, the development of your own property is within reach of a large part of the market, whereby it's possible to develop your own dream design at a location of your choice. I would like to add that being able to design and build a property exactly in the way you want it with the advice of a professional is something very satisfactory and exciting, mostly exciting. It is important to differentiate buying a property from a developer or developing your own property, let's say being a self-developer. Although private developing is now more accessible than ever, it is important not to underestimate the complexity of a construction process. It is important to understand that a self-developer has a certain legal liability that needs to be attended and ensured. It is very important to understand that if you decide to buy a plot and build your own property, you need to have a professional guidance through the process, not just legally, but also from a technical point of view. And this is where a project manager comes into the picture. Well, Unique Projects is a company specialized in construction supervision, project and construction management. We represent the interest of the client in the design and build process of his property, directly supervise the implementation, quality, and ensure that the project is built within the prescribed budget and time. Our customers are guided by an English-speaking architect or engineer who ensures clear communication of the client requirements. It is important in a building process to understand that the architect is responsible for designing a project and making sure that it is correctly executed as per design and the local regulations. Well, especially in a project with a certain amount of complexity, the architect is normally unable to control that the construction is going on as scheduled and have a grip on the cost control, as he is focused on the part that he is responsible of. A project manager, as the direct representative of the client or self-developer, self-builder, has an overall control over the whole process, not just the main contractor, but over all the parties involved in building a property. He controls the communication with the architect, external building control, budgets, quality, council negotiations, planning license, etc. Most important of all, through a detailed planning, he evaluates possible risks that may emerge during the construction process. Time is a factor that we sometimes forget, but can be the most expensive element of building a property. Now I would like to share a short video of some of our current works of new build and refurbishment projects that we are managing and sometimes design for different clients. So Juan Fran, if you could project the video. Thank you very much. Well, before I finish, I thought it would be interesting to talk about the practical steps of refurbishing or building a new property. Some topics that have been discussed a lot in the different webinars, but might be interesting. First of all, obviously the plot. The location of the project. Obviously, the first step is to discover where you want to build the property. The costs tend to be normally around 30 or maybe 40% of the global cost of the construction. So that is why it is very important to have an idea in advance of the possibility that the desired plot offers. It is also essential that you already have an idea of the build-up area of your property so that you already have a good grip on your total budget at an early stage. It is very important to have an attorney or solicitor check that everything is in order before buying a plot or existing property to refurbish, as it is also important to have a first contact with an architect or planner to be sure that what you have in mind is possible to be built at your chosen location. The next step would be the design and the building permit. The architect you choose will be the one who will actually develop your ideas through sketches, drawings, 3D presentations, virtual reality, etc. Once you are satisfied with the design you have developed together with the architect, you proceed applying for a permit, as your project needs to be approved by the local administration or the municipality of or a town. Depending on the municipality, it might take between 2 months and even sometimes a year or more to obtain this license, which is a lot. Therefore, it is important to take into account that your location choice has an impact on the time it is actually going to take to build your property and finalize the works. The third step will focus on the tender drawings and finding a suitable constructor or contractor. While your permit application process is underway, you will receive the tender drawings and information from your architect. With these documents, you can start requesting quotes for the construction and look for a contractor that suits the needs of your specific project. By comparing these offers, you can decide which contractors are the most qualified and financially interesting for the project, and if there is room for possible negotiations. Currently, around 70% of building projects do not finish, well, at least in these areas, do not finish within the established budget or timeline. Therefore, your contractor choice is of vital importance. Cheaper is not always better from an overall perspective. Once again, I think it is extremely important that an attorney or solicitor assists you in composing a construction contract document. The type of contract may vary depending on the type of construction and the risk a developer or a self-developer is willing to take. If anybody wants to get deeper into this topic, please feel free to contact me or ask any questions you may have. Finally, the last step, well, not the last step, but the next step towards finishing the works. When the construction starts, it is very important to understand that time is of the essence. Very important, time is of the essence. Indirect costs, inconsistent workflow, inefficiency might all lead to delays that translate into unexpected cost. I insist, time is money, especially during construction works. And once again, with the project manager, you minimize this risk by having direct control over the whole situation. Okay, well, I hope this gives an overall view of the process. Of course, there are many more details that we haven't discussed. So if anybody has any questions, please feel free to ask them or contact us. Well, on the other hand, you can follow us on Facebook or LinkedIn to see what projects we are currently working on, or perhaps be aware of possible investment opportunities that arise that we might find. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Djordy. Let me just welcome back here Michael Davies. He's a solicitor practicing law many years from Andalusia, Almeria. Hello, Michael.
Hello, Ignacio. Sorry for the delay. I'm working from home today and everything was a bit confusing.
No problem at all. It's a pleasure, and thank you for joining us today and sharing information about buying a property in Spain, and especially here, Michael, we're talking about building a home property here, a property of your dreams. You know, basically, we discuss about buying off plan, buying a resale, refurbishing, or just doing your own, buying your piece of land and building. Now, I would like to start now with Pedro, if he could explain to us a little bit about due diligence on this, because you both agree, Michael and Pedro, that it is much more complex to deal with a new build, because you need to start doing the due diligence to find the right plot of land, to have the license, and then you need to have a proper contract with either a project manager or the architect and make sure everything is correct. Then the timing is essential. The penalty clause for the builders obviously are essential. So I'm sure the three of us did experience a lot of stress, not only going through as clients and building our own one, but just for clients who are going through this road. Okay, I'm going to pass over, if you could please, 5 minutes, Pedro, explain to us about the due diligence, what for you are the important topics, and then Michael could lead on what he thinks clients should know when they are thinking about building their own home. Over to you, Pedro. Microphone, Pedro, yeah. Pedro, we cannot hear you. Turn on the speaker just now. Yeah.
Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yes, perfect.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, well, what I was saying is that, okay, in a process of buying a property, in a new property, obviously, I think it's been said by Djordy in his presentation that obviously we can divide into buying a new property where it's already a promoter, a developer, a building company is building because he owns the land and builds the property and sell it to you as an individual or as a company, also as an investment. But at the end, you don't buy the land and you don't start the process with the construction of building company. You just buy the apartment or buy the house into a specific scenario or a compound. Or on the other side, as has been said, there is also the possibility to buy the land and then start the process of construction with a project manager, with an architect, and being able to instruct the architect, project manager, and building company at the end promote as being a self-promoter, a self-developer of the building or the house that you want to build. Obviously, there are advantages and disadvantages on one of them of both process. But let's, at the end, basically, in general terms, obviously, one of the other ones, making a due diligence with a new building, in the process of a new building, always starts, obviously, all the building companies, when they sell, at the end, normally you start with a reservation agreement, with a reservation contract, which says that the building company has a license in order to build on that land. It says that the land is owned by the building company. That's perfect. But due diligence, obviously, from us is to check that obviously owns the land. Obviously, the license where it's going to be built is correct in order to build this project, basic project is going to be done. And obviously, the description of what is being offered on the marketing and commercial situation is going to happen at the end of the process of building. One of the things that Ignacio and Michael, it is something that we've been fighting during probably the last decade, is obviously one of the important things that needs to be checked is the guarantees that are given on the process of a new building. When it's an off-plan, it needs to be given guarantees on buying a property. Whenever at the end you buy and you pay some money, let's say a reservation contract. Well, let's divide the payment, really, how it works. Well, how it works in a standard way, but this is very subject to agreement. So reservation normally agreement payment 3,000, 6,000, maybe more, and then on a buying off plan, for example, normally it's a process of buying 10% during some months or 20%, up to 40% of the total amount, up to 50% total amount, and the rest of the money on completion date. This may vary in some way. But that money that you have paid during the process of building must be guaranteed. It's a guarantee that must be given by the developer, by the building company, the developer, if it's the same person. Okay, that's extremely, extremely important. Obviously, all the description of the property, everything needs to be duly described, everything, all the delayments needs to be, all the penalties needs to be included. And obviously the obligation as a buyer, one of the main obligations is to pay accordingly as it says in the contract. Then we could say about, which I don't want to enter in complexity regarding when is a breach of contract by a seller or by a buyer, but basically the due diligence from us is planning law, according to license and land, according to the description, and accordingly, obviously, in the finalization of the process, that property has their habitation certification in order to be able to be lived in that. On the other side, and it's been said by Djordy, when you buy a land by yourself and then you want to start process, obviously that has some advantages, which basically at the beginning is because at the end you're going to do the home as you want to, and at the end, probably in the future, if you do it correctly, it will be cheaper. At the end, this gain that is going to be taken by the building company probably is you're going to save it, but obviously you will enter in an anxiety process because it will be delayed, will be some problems with the building company. Obviously, this is why it's important to have a project manager. At the end, the due diligence on that side obviously is the same. I mean, the land, firstly, just to perfectly check that the boundaries of the land are perfect, are correct. The land registry, obviously, there is no charges, encumbrances. And at the end, with the building company, with and through project managers, which I highly, highly recommend, an architect, with someone you have confidence, also with obviously with a lawyer, but with an architect that conducts you in order to all the process, which is technically extremely, I would say, extremely complex, and you need to have someone to trust on. And obviously, the due diligence comes into a construction company that at the end will be building the home of your dreams, according to the basic project, according to your instructions and instructions of the project manager. In one way or the other one, I will finalize in 1 minute. It is important to know that there are guarantees on new building, and that's one, I would say, one of the situations or differences between if you buy a new building instead if you buy a not new building, let's say a second-hand building. It's like guarantees for 1 year, some things that are not correct for 3 years, and then for 10 years. And when appears those things are wrong on the process of building, then you have a 2 years precision in order to start the action on that. So that is important, but for new buildings, there's a guarantee by law, Ley de Ordenación de Edificación. It's important to know that this law is compulsory, and something that every single buyer will have this guarantee absolutely in order to, in case something appears, something is wrong, it will have a right to apply to the building companies, construction, even architect, in order to repair what should have been done correctly. And well, Michael, obviously, I'm sure that you want to say something else about this, and then we can discuss about this topic.
How long have I got? Because okay.
Yeah, Michael, just go over the process of your experience and the due diligence.
Let me sort of say first thing is my name is Michael Davies. I'm a Spanish lawyer. I've been practicing 25 years down here in Andalusia. I've been through many purchase processes, both under construction, new, etc. I just say that so that you know that I've done it before. I know what I'm talking about. Okay, the first thing is that, so when people buy a property in Spain, there's a lot going and in favor of buying something that's already built, okay? Whether it's second-hand or whether it's a new build, but if it's already built, you know what you're purchasing. There's a small difference in taxes between whether it was new or second-hand, but as far as uncertainty, there is no uncertainty. You know what you're buying. You've got a good lawyer. He'll make sure you buy it safely. When you buy something under construction, this can be, you can buy it in two ways, basically. You either buy the whole package from a builder that's already the owner of the land, and you agree to take over the property. At the end, as far as the money, it can be secured without any problem by your solicitor, because he'll make sure that you have bank guarantees. You're a consumer and the builder is responsible for everything, and you have your bank guarantees. What, of course, the lawyer cannot guarantee is there are not going to be small disputes or issues regarding the quality, etc. at the end. The other procedure, which is the really ambitious one, which is the one where a client buys his own plot and decides to build his dream villa. We've been through it many, many times, and it can be done. It can be done in a cost-effective way as well. But people must not think that there's any possibility that they'll go into this and have their villa built 1 year later without any headaches whatsoever. When people tell us that, we tell them it's impossible and that we don't want to handle the purchase because we've never seen it happen yet. But many clients have gone through the procedure and are extremely happy at the end with what's happened. So what I always think is that there are two key players. If you decide, if you're brave enough to go and do that, is both the architect and the lawyer. And the best thing is if you hire them right from the beginning, even perhaps before you buy the plot, because there are overlapping things that the architect and the lawyer will need to look into. There's what you can build there, and the architect's very helpful for the lawyer and the lawyer for the architect. And that's it. Regarding, if I go through the process, it's going to take a long time, Ignacio. I think
if you want to go briefly, Michael.
Briefly, if you buy, I think we're talking about, in this webinar, we were going to talk mainly about the option of buying the plot and then building the...
Yes, which is a complex one. Yeah, the taxation, Michael, on the buying, probably VAT, if you want to run through it, and the contract with the builder.
So we start off with the purchase of the plot. When you purchase the plot, the lawyer is essential, and at that point we think the architect is a very good idea as well, because he will be able to better define when the lawyer looks at the urbanistic situation of the plot and tells the client what can be built on it, meters, etc. The architect is probably more qualified to determine whether it's the right plot for them or not. So when you buy the plot, you've basically got, depending on where the land is sold second-hand or new, in other words, from a builder that's developed the project, you'll either pay transfer tax. Here in Andalusia, it's a 7%. Up in Valencia region where you are, it's 10% if you buy the plot second-hand. If you buy it new from the builder, you'll be paying 21% VAT instead of the transfer tax. Okay, so that's the main thing. You'd also pay a notary fee, anywhere between 700 and 1,500 euro. You'd also be paying a registrar's fee, maybe 400 euro, and a solicitor's fee, and that varies a lot. The important thing is to get a budget in writing. If you're buying it new, apart from the VAT, which we've said is 21%, you pay a document tax, which here in Andalusia is 1.2%, and I think up in Valencia region is 1.5%. So those are the expenses on the purchase. Then you've got to get the building license. The building license, there's no other way but going through your architect. You need to apply for a building license. Then, apart from the building license, you've got to pay for a 10-year insurance policy, your architect, your barrejador. We always say, and Djordy can tell me if I'm wrong on this, but I always say, make sure to allow about 10% for the architect and the barrejador, but it may not be very accurate. It may vary, obviously, from one place to another. Then also, so we've got on the building, we've got the building license that you have to pay for. You've got to pay your architect and your overseer. You've got the 10-year insurance policy, the construction policy. That varies in price. Djordy will know the up-to-date price on that. And with that, you go ahead and build your house, and hopefully the license won't take too long. You build away. Basically, the architect will certify each step of the way, the stages of construction. Your solicitor will have drawn up the building contract, which is extremely important, to draw a contract that allows you to retain payments if the building is not going in the same rhythm that you've agreed on. The architect will certify each point whether that stage of construction has been met. That's why it's very important to have the architect working for you and not being someone that's been planned by the builder. When everything is finalized, the architect will issue a thing called a certificate of end of work that says that the house has been built conforming to his plans. You also have to obtain what's called the building, at least in Andalusia, it's called the license of first occupation, whereby the town hall says that they're happy that the property has been built conforming to the original building licenses and is all in good order. Once you've got that, you'll be going back to your lawyer, who will prepare a new title deed, which is with the description of the property that will then be added to the plot. So that at the end, and then he has to pay, you declare the title deed, and basically we're talking about a fee of anywhere between 1,000 to 2,000 euro for the notary. We're talking about a document tax of the value of construction, which here in Andalusia is 1.2%, up in Valencia 1.5%, and a registrar's fee anywhere between 300 euro and maybe 1,000 euro at the end to register what's called the new build. Once you've got that, you've only got left the small details like signing up for electricity and water. For that, the electrician and the plumber that have worked for the builder will provide you with things called boletines, which are like certification, safety certificates to say that the installations are safe. And with that, you can connect electricity, water, and get everything working. This is a real quick run through. Obviously, your lawyer will be able to sit down with you and explain it all in detail. And of course, he'll be able to work it out exactly depending on the price of the property. I think you guys have got guidelines all printed out and things. So maybe if people want to know a little bit more about this, maybe they could download your guidelines.
Yeah, Michael, could you please send us, drop us your email address, and if you could say loud as well, because people who are not able to read.
One last thing I wanted to say about if you have a house built under construction. What we always say is, for example, in our case, and I know you do as well, we sometimes travel and go to other parts of Spain to sign a conveyance or an inheritance and things like that. The bit when you're having a house built, we do not recommend using a lawyer that's not sort of in your area. I mean, we would never handle a purchase under construction up in Madrid or something like that, because it really needs hands-on. Sometimes there are problems. For example, there's a dispute regarding, whether the qualities are correct. So you want to send a notary around to take some photographs. All those things are impossible to handle at a distance. It's impossible. And things to do with the licenses and things like that, you need a lawyer that knows the town hall where you're going to do the building. That's sort of I don't know what you think about that, but we've never handled buildings under construction outside of where our office is, because we just think it's just not workable. So my contact details, our firm is Davies Solicitors, that's daviessolicitors.com. We operate in the whole of Andalusia. Offices are in Marbella, Almeria, and in Oaxaca. And it's www.daviessolicitors.com is our.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Pedro, will you just, we're going to start with the questions and answers now. Are you able to say your email or send your email address as well?
Yeah, I will put in my email here in the chat.
But if you could say loud as well, because some people are not able to read.
Which is my name, Pedro, and then is the name of the law firm, is Pellicer Heredia, .com. I will write it down.
Yeah. A lot of people are not able to see the chat here. It's only for people who
if you go Pellicer, Pellicer, and Heredia, which is a law firm. At the end, they will find us rapidly in the webpage.
Okay, and the other one that is with Michael, so now it's shown on the screen.
Yes, you can see, I've tried to put our logo behind. Davies Abogados Solicitors.
Yeah, there we go. We're able to see
Davies Solicitors, Davies Solicitors, you'll find us.
Okay, perfect. Djordy, before, well, you did mention here your just in case I have questions. Let's start to run through questions. And then you could give them your email address just in case they have specific questions. Now we've got here one from Michael. Is there a rough build cost per square meter for different styles and levels of build types? This is for Djordy probably. Djordy, could you give us a rough idea? I know it's not an easy one because you'll have a big variety of qualities. But can you give us, from your experience, what will be the cheapest that you think you've seen per square meters in the areas where you are, and obviously the unlimited prices that probably could be on top of it? Over to you, Djordy.
Thank you, Ignacio. Well, it is a difficult one, and to be honest, it's a question that it's the most common question I get asked, to be honest. This is a very difficult one. Here in Valencia, we got the IVE, Instituto Valenciano de la Edificación, which determines the cost of a square meter price, which last year was 605 euros, and this year went up to 685 euros due to the changes in the construction economy. This is far from the reality, obviously. You cannot compare a refurbishment of a house, perhaps in an area with a low demand than a house with sea views and 𝐏𝐵. It is very difficult to give a specific building cost price. I would say that if you want to build a new property, it's very difficult to get below perhaps 1,000 euros per square meters. It is possible, but you need to meet certain circumstances, construct in a certain way. So this is a very relative issue. It really depends on location, materials, circumstances, etc., etc. But once again, if I can get more information, perhaps of the location, etc., I might be able to give an idea of what the directions might be.
Mm-hmm. Good. Now he carries on asking questions about, do councils insist on financial contribution to them for infrastructure if you build a new property? I think he's talking about the tax. Yeah.
As well as
over to you, Djordy. Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure if it works the same in the whole of Spain, but at least here in Valencia, we got the council service expenses, the tasas, And then we got the ICIO, which is the Impuesto de Construcciones, Instalaciones y Obras. Normally, both of them are around 4% of the PEM. The PEM is the estimated building budget. So in some cases, the ICIO is constant, but in some cases, the councils have a lower fee. Therefore, it normally varies between 3.2 to 4% of that PEM. So let's say if you, without taxes, without everything, your estimation to build a new property is 400,000 euros or 500,000 euros, you would pay 3 or 4% on that number.
Okay, good. Then we have a question from Kim. Who's responsible for removing asbestos from a property? How much does a roof cost on an oil farm property? Again, over to you, Djordy. It's a good one as well for you.
It's an interesting one. Well, like in the UK and like in the rest of Europe, to remove asbestos, you need specialized companies with specific certifications to be able to take this off. It needs to be delivered to specific places, and therefore it needs to be handled with care. You could get a huge fine if you do this without the proper means or without the proper company that is allowed to do it. Regarding the costs, that's another variable question. I would be happy to investigate a bit further if you want to write me. This question is made by Kim.
Can you let us know in loud your email, Djordy, just in case you're not able to read?
Yes. Well, yes, it's a difficult one. I'm going to give the easier one. info@uniqueprojects.s. I'm going to spell unique projects, which is UNIQUEPROJECTS.s.
Thank you. John is asking as well, are there standard forms of constructions contracting in Spain that do not need to be created by a solicitor? But probably that's more for Michael and Pedro. Obviously, this is a very important one, Michael and Pedro, isn't it? Not every standard form is valid because you're trying to prevent problems. Over to you, Michael.
Yeah, well, all I can say is if you're going to build yourself your own house, that is one circumstance. I would never recommend you try and sort of do the contracts on the cheap to call it something. Okay, you need to engage a lawyer from the beginning, because you will have some different situations along the way. And the thing is that unless you've got a solicitor that sort of handle the contracts to sort of hold responsible for if something goes wrong, no lawyer is going to want to handle the claim with the builder, etc., and they're just going to blame everything on the contract. So you really need a contract that is drawn up by a lawyer, so that later on, if disputes arise, you can go back to that same lawyer and he can defend what the contract says. I think it's very, very important. That's all I've got to say about that.
Pedro, would you like to say anything about contracts when you build your own home? Well, what experience on litigation as well you had?
I agree with it says by Michael. Obviously, as our thoughts always goes in the future problems on litigation. Obviously, when we draft documents and contract and building contracts like many others, at the end, our experience is not just a type of contract and then you just sign it and full stop. Obviously, there are plenty of amendments, plenty of things that needs to be done, accurate concepts and descriptions, and at the end it goes back and forwards with the seller, buyer, or with the building company and the developer, in this case the individual which is building the house on its own land. But obviously an expert obviously to get into that contract in order to prevent problems, and obviously to have big arguments in the future if something appears, obviously is a must.
Thank you, Pedro. Let me just add, they might think is just a simple document, but it's not. I from experience, you three will agree that you might end up having a problem. you might end up having an issue, a technical. The architect is very important because he's pretty much the guide and the surveyor if something goes wrong. But it's probably might happen a discrepancy, and you're going to end up, if obviously the worst came to the worst, to court. That's why it is the legal tool in your benefit to protect it and do it your way. That's why, as you guys said, it is important they choose an independent lawyer, and it is important the contract to be quite down to your needs and your protection. So I wouldn't recommend at all to download any type of contract. And most of the cases that we deal with on litigations are when problems come, and a standard contract is normally a problem because it doesn't make things accurate to the existing situation. When you rent a property, exactly the same, they just download just a simple contract, and then later on is when the problem starts. So highly recommend you to make your own through your lawyer with your needs, and even with penalty clause. I highly recommend that, because you might both remember on the credit crunch many years now already, how difficult it was to do all these things and meet on the right time. And thank God we had all these penalty clauses that the builders at least will respect, wouldn't it, Pedro, Michael? Thanks to all these clauses in the buyer's interest, isn't it? So watch out for these. Be careful with contracts. That's why one thing is purchasing the land. Pedro did discuss about off-plan properties, guarantees. When you're being self-developer, it is important to put the land as soon as possible in your name. Some developers want to sell the land and do the building. And it is very important as well that, and they might say, well, no, I'm not giving you bank guarantees because, you know, it costs money. At the end of the day, it's an insurance, but it's peace of mind. And we highly recommend you here to do it. But if that was not the situation, I highly recommend you as well to put as soon as possible the land in your name, and buy the land and declare the new build and the construction as soon as possible. So at least you're the owner of that piece of land. At least you've got the guarantee that your money is well spent, and you've got equity against it. And obviously, in case of any issues, you've got the handle. So that's very important as well. And the contract, the building contract, I really think it is key. We're having another question, and probably it's for Djordy. Djordy, Kim is asking, are solar panels allowed on roof and buildings? Over to you.
That's a nice one. I could talk hours about that one. Yeah, of course. Depending on the situation, depending if you're the sole owner, depending if for some reason within the planning regulations it's not allowed, you might put them or not. I would like to add to this that currently with the current governments, everything regarding renewable energies is being quite proactive. You can even apply for a subsidy in some cases. Therefore, normally you're allowed to place solar panels on your roof. It's highly recommended, in fact, with the current energy prices.
Good. Now, Elena is asking, and probably this is more a question for the lawyer. Yes, Michael, over to you. Yes.
Yeah, that question that Elena's asking, it came up just yesterday, in fact, on a completion that we had. Basically, what she's asking is, for those that are watching on Facebook, is, as a self-promoter, do you need seguro de penal? As many people that build a house as a self-promote don't. And what's the circumstances with this if they don't see the seguro when they want to sell? Okay, so if you're one of these clients that Ignacio's mentioned before, you bought your plot and you're building your own house. When she says self-promoter, that's what she means, someone building on their own plot of land. The seguro de penal is not legally obligatory. This is the insurance policy that covers certain defects of the structure and the foundations of the property. It's not obligatory, but if you sell within 10 years of the building having been finished, and at that point, you of course don't have the 10-year insurance policy, the buyer has to accept this and sign the disclosure on the sign that they accept that situation, and a disclaimer on the title deed at the moment of purchase. So the only problem with that is that, and the notary will accept it as long as you prove that you did at least live in the property for a month or two after you finalize the construction. And he wants to make sure that you weren't really a professional builder, that instead you were just building the house for yourself. So show him some electricity bills, some water bills, and the notary will then say, okay, there's no problem, the sale can go through, but the buyer has to say on the title deed that he's aware that there's no 10-year insurance policy and he accepts it. So it's a question really of cost. So probably Djordy can tell us how much a 10-year insurance policy costs now with its different things. But of course, if you have an intention of possibly selling within a 10-year insurance, a 10-year timeline, we'd recommend having the 10-year insurance policy, especially if it's an expensive house, because it can put a buyer off, the fact that they have to sign a disclaimer saying that there's no 10-year insurance policy. Obviously, maybe Djordy can tell us what the actual insurance costs nowadays, because I've lost track of that.
Djordy, do you have any idea on that?
The cost
of the 10-year structural insurance? Do you know if it's too expensive?
It could start around 1,500 euros. It could go up towards 3,000, 4,000. It really depends on the size of the new build. And if I may add the following, from my point of view, I think it's always recommendable to get this insurance. It is true that you need to have an external building control company during the construction works to be able to certify that everything went well to get this this liability, this insurance. But on the other hand, if for any reason you have to sell, if for any reason your buyer only buys with this guarantee, the costs for getting it are not high for the guarantees that it later gives you for a possible sale.
Okay. Pedro, would you like to add anything on the construction process here? Obviously, we've got a question here as well for Michael and for you. Lawyer closing Valencia, Liliana, I think, as I would add here, we cover the Costa Blanca province, so pretty much is Alicante province and Valencia. Depending on complexity, we will be able to tell you whether we can handle it or not. But Costa Blanca, we're happy to do, and probably Valencia, depending on what she is, Laura is saying. I don't know what she means here. Is she meaning an off-plan property, or I don't know if you want to clarify that, Lara? Michael, Pedro, would you like to say something here to Laura as well?
Well, what I can say is, she's saying, can Michael recommend? Well, I can definitely recommend a good lawyer up in the Valencia region. I'd recommend Pedro Heredia, who's, I think, office in Heredia, must be only maybe, what 30 minutes away from Valencia, or...
Yeah, that's right. It's very close from me, very close.
Yeah, so definitely Pedro.
From Denia, Heredia.
Yeah, if Laura could clarify what type of builds, so Pedro...
We have already built, I mean, represent clients in Valencia and Liliana in particular. Also, we have had some clients buying in that fantastic area, which I know personally. And nothing else, obviously, about this self-insurance for 10 years, which is called Seguro de Cenal. Just to add that this kind of insurance, obviously, just affects to, I mean, when it's like a stability of the building, this insurance, it does not cover. Because it looks like always that, oh, I have that, is going to cover everything. Well, it's not. That just covers really for the stability, for the structure of the building, but nothing more. That's not legally, for example, cover or the type of risk, and you cannot. That should be another kind of claim. Obviously, this is why it's important to understand what is the process of the building, which are the guarantees, and what covers the guarantee, and what needs to be included in the contract that we already said. That needs to be obviously a little bit more accurate in order to bring responsibilities or in an agreement to the builder. But it is not like a multi-risk insurance, or this is just a 10 years insurance for the stability of the building, the structure. I just wanted to add that about the Seguro de Cenal or 10 years guarantee.
Okay. Basically, as legal tips, as we said, make sure you choose the right lawyer, the right architect, the right project manager, because there is a lot involved. And as we said, we don't need to end up into a legal battle later on. Things could be prevented from the very start. And I highly recommend you to do all these due diligence in advance. We don't recommend to put down any money without being discussed by your lawyer, particularly before everything is agreed. I think, Djordy, I don't know, Djordy, how is normally the approach with the architects? Normally, they need to contract you to do due diligence. Is that correct, before you even do the project?
Yes, that is correct. That is correct. That is correct.
Okay, right. I don't know if Michael, Pedro, would you like to add anything like legal tips finally for people, or we just play the video now?
No, I think it's been a great, obviously any general advice, because this is very, it really needs, you just sit down with an architect, sit down with a lawyer for the detail. But I think it's just a general idea, mainly to understand that there is certain complexity, and that's why it does need looking into carefully before you jump in.
Pedro, anything else?
Well, thank you, Ignacio. Well, just my recommendation is to take independent advice whenever you are going to start a building process as a developer, as a self-developer. Instruct an architect, a project manager, and obviously an independent lawyer in order to conduct and guide you on the legal side.
Okay, we're going to just now we're going to play a video now. We're going to thank you for your presence, and just don't forget, do things by the book. Okay, so over to Juanfran, and see you very soon. Thank you all. Juanfran, cuando quieras.
You can't stop thinking about it. That hidden cove, just for you. That little hideaway in the mountains. Or that beautiful postcard town. Dreaming about enjoying the fresh air again. Feeling the sun on your skin. Exploring. Walking. Traveler, there is no path. Paths are made by walking. Never stop dreaming. Spain will wait.